Welcome to Construction Genius, and today we are on the owner's side of the table. My guest is James Pease. He is an executive director of design and construction at the UCSF Medical Center out of the Bay Area in California. We discuss different project delivery methods, what owners are looking for in general contractors in terms of collaboration and partnership, and why integrated project delivery, or IPD, in some cases is an extremely effective method of project delivery. IPD is an approach that integrates people, systems, business structures, and practices into a process that harnesses the talents and insights of all the participants to optimize project results, as well as increasing value to the owner, reducing waste, and maximizing efficiency through all phases of design, fabrication, and construction. It's not the only way to build a construction project, but it is a way that can be extremely effective if it's the right type of project, you have the right type of owner, designer, and contractor. And that's what we talk about here in today's interview. Enjoy my discussion with James. You'll find links in the show notes to James's website, which is leanipd.com, as well as his YouTube channel, where he has a number of videos which explain the integrated project delivery method. And those videos, I think you'll find very useful for sharing with folks in your organization to help them get familiar with that approach and for them to really be considering, is this a type of approach we should be using? Are there clients that we should be targeting that perhaps we could do business with? Again, my name is Eric Anderton. Thank you for listening to Construction Genius today, and enjoy my discussion with James. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. James, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Eric. Good to be here.
James, you've been on the owner's side of the equation for 20 years now. Is that right?
Yep.
What do you, in your mind, with the experience that you've had building different types of projects in different environments, what are the biggest opportunities for improvement from the owner's perspective that a construction general contractor has?
So a little bit about my kind of background. I started at a hospital. I really don't have any background in construction. I studied management science and engineering, like an economics degree. So I started in construction at an owner that did mostly design, bid, build. And so makes a lot of sense when you get started, right? Get a design, whoever can give it to you the cheapest is who you should go to.
Yeah.
And, for those that don't work in construction, that makes sense. When you work in construction, it doesn't make as much sense.
And why do you say that? Why do you say it doesn't make as much sense?
Because construction is more complicated than, say, buying a car. You can go to 3 different dealerships and you say, look, I want this truck with this color and these wheels. And if you get 3 prices, it'll be the same. Construction doesn't work that way. You don't get the exact same outcome. Then I've done some work with design assist, guaranteed maximum price delivery models. I've done some work with integrated project delivery, experimenting now with design build, now that I'm at a public entity and we're a little more restricted on our delivery models. So I think the message to owners is, the delivery model that you use and how you set up your project really drives your outcomes. So that carries over to the general contractor. The way you get hired, the way you set up your contracts with your subcontractors, the way you engage with the design, if you're able to participate in the design or whether you come on board, say, when it's done and permitted already, those are probably the most important factors that determine the outcome, how successful a project will be. And I'd measure that by, does the owner get what they were expecting to get for what they expected to pay when they expected to get it?
So that would be in terms of the quality, the schedule, and the price.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Where do you see the biggest conflicts occurring between owners and general contractors in a construction project?
Well, schedule, budget, and quality.
Yeah.
Those 3 things. I mean, there's a joke that you can pick any 2 of those, but you can't have all 3.
Right.
I think, a lot of the work that I'm doing right now is done design, bid, build. It's a public environment. And
Yep.
so it's very common that we will open the ceilings and find that we can't build what we've permitted, that the contractor has not priced what it's going to cost to actually build the whole thing. They've priced exactly what's on the drawings. Now I take responsibility. That's the way we set it up. But that model, they price exactly what's on the drawings. They're not pricing exactly what it's going to cost to actually finish it. And so we argue about that all the way through the project. We often haven't allocated enough money to do it. So we're going back and requesting more money. We're processing change orders.
Yep.
All of that leads to delays. So the projects don't open when we thought they were going to open, which downstream affects a lot of other things. So
it's interesting because, we're talking about the classic issues that it seems every construction project has to one degree or another. And the question that is continually kicked around the industry is, what can we do to fix this? And in your mind, based on your 20 years of experience, is there one model that works the best, or are there a couple of different ones that you would choose from? What in your mind would be the most effective way in the environments you're experienced in to overcome some of these challenges?
So the short answer, the only model that would work across the board is a model where you actually analyze the project and then picked a delivery model that was appropriate. So that's one way of saying, no, I don't think there's one delivery model or contract strategy that works across the board on everything.
Okay.
You say lump sum, while a lot of times I rail against it, it has its place and it's very valuable for a lot of reasons. If the scope is relatively easy, it's a good way to get a competitive price. The paperwork is also much easier. The contracts are much easier. So it's easier to administer. Integrated project delivery or, really heavy design assist costs a lot of money up front. And if the job is not that complicated, you won't get a return. You'll never get the money you spent up front back.
Right.
There's a trade-off of how big is the project? How complicated is the project? Have I built, if I'm going to build a Costco or something and I've built 20 or 30 of them already, I can probably be pretty safe in bidding it out. I know my drawings are good. I've worked out all the complicated details. Renovation in an occupied hospital that's 70 years old, design, bid, build will get you in trouble.
Okay. And so that's where you're playing every day, is in the renovation of 70-year-old hospitals, right?
Yeah. Every once in a while we get to build something ground up, but a lot of the work is renovations in existing buildings.
Okay. So in that environment, what do you guys as owners, how would you like to play the game?
So the easiest way to play the game is to get everybody who's going to participate on board, before you've even finished your design. So an example, we have to build this very complicated operating room, and I would prefer to have the mechanical, electrical, plumbing trades on board before I even pick where I'm going to build it. Because what we found out is one area that looks really easy on the floor, when you go to the floor below, it has this, it's called an angio room. It's a very complex procedure room. And you look above the ceiling and you can't see because it's full of steel supports.
Yes.
So that's not a good place to try to put a bunch of underslab conduit, even though the room above is the easiest. We found another place that looked good until we worked on the drawings, and there's a shear wall that we would need to put conduit through. So we also have a really tight slab to slab. So it's not clear if we're going to be able to fit everything and keep the ceiling height that the vendor of the equipment requires. So it's really hard to expect a design team to figure all of that out without builder input, I found.
Okay. So that's interesting, bringing in the MEPs even before you might bring in the CM or the GC.
Yeah. And on this project, actually, we have an electrician who's not going to bid on the project because we have this conflict of interest issue. He's not a big enough company where he would actually want to do this job, but he can give us advice and look above the ceiling. So it's not perfect. I prefer to have the company that does the investigation own that scope all the way through. I think you get more buy-in, but yeah, we have MEP looking at it and we have no GC yet.
Okay. So with this integrated project delivery, just give us a little bit, what are some of the key elements of that process?
Probably the part that's the most different is that design and construction and the owner sign a single contract for a single dollar value.
Okay.
So instead of, design, bid, build, the owner holds a contract with the designer and they hold a separate contract with the builder, and then things get subcontracted from there.
Yep.
Design, build, the owner holds a contract with a primary, right? Either designer or builder. I think it's usually the builder, and then they will contract to the designer. So there's always a adversarial relationship one way or another.
Yeah.
IPD puts the designer, builder, and owner on an equal footing.
Right.
And other components, it's generally open book. Well, I think always open book with a guaranteed cost to the teams. So the worst that they can do on the project is to cover their costs,
right?
Which is very unique. When you ask an owner, well, how'd you convince your group to do that? It's like, when we look back, we never got a project for less than it cost.
Right.
Regardless of contract model, we always pay what it costs to get it built.
Right.
So this is just to more acknowledge that up front. Profit is at risk. The team is judged collectively based on the cost outcome of the project. So let's say one trade is having a significant budget issue. In a normal contract, everybody will pull away from them and try to paper away, the risk. In this contract, everybody's going to lose their profit if they don't help that person figure the issue out. So they come to help instead.
Okay, so what you're describing to me sounds like construction nirvana. But let me just play it out a little bit.
Yeah.
But here we are in the real world. You've got the Golden Gate there on your screenshot, behind you. And then, right behind there is the city with all the new buildings, old buildings. Just think about what happened with the Millennial Tower and sinking and, whatever. Mm-hmm. So you're describing construction nirvana, and I can hear some of my listeners saying, come on, let's talk about real life. So tell me how this actually works. Give me some experiences that you've had in real life where this has actually worked.
Well, at my previous employer, I was fortunate. Over a 10-year period, I participated in 20 of these projects. So not one or two. I think that I had to ask for a budget augmentation on one of those projects. It's probably $500 million worth of contract value. One project, I had to ask for $500,000 additional to finish the project. And I asked for the money before I started construction.
Okay.
I mean, I knew when I had my coordination drawings that I wasn't going to be able to do the job. So I was able to give the owner a chance to not do the job. I wasn't halfway through. The biggest job I wasn't personally involved in that my previous employer was a $1 billion construction contract in downtown San Francisco.
Yep.
And it was delivered on time on a schedule that was set more than 3 years earlier. And that doesn't happen on a hospital project on a full city block in a metro like San Francisco ever. I mean, that team actually delivered two of them, one for $1 billion and one for 500 million or so.
There's a tremendous amount of trust and collaboration involved in a model like IPD.
Absolutely.
Tell me in your experience on these successful projects, how that trust and collaboration is built and maintained.
Yeah, I appreciate that you said is built. A lot of people say that, people trust until they don't. And I would say it doesn't quite work that way. I think this industry is generally adversarial, not always, but generally. And so people go in mistrusting and expecting to have to protect themselves. So it does actually take a while to kind of break down some of those traditional fears. You do that by being very transparent and open book. You do it by the owner leading. I mean, we put our entire project budget in the contract with our contingency and everything. We said, look, here's our budget. You can see how much we have for equipment, IT. That's not typical. I know early in my career, I would never share that information. I would keep that secret.
Right.
Now we just lead with it. This is how much money we have to spend on this project. We want you to help us do it.
So let me interrupt you there, please. That idea of the owner leading, is that fundamental if this sort of process is going to work?
Personally, I believe so. I've seen a lot of projects that call it IPD light, but a lot of that is because the owner wants all the good, but they still want a GMP and they still want to be able to bid some trades. And in general, I don't think that works. Yeah, it doesn't work. The owner says, everybody else be transparent and collaborate, but I'm not going to. The owner really has the role of setting the culture of how people are going to act.
Right. So if you were sitting down with someone and you were trying to persuade them as an owner to take on this perspective, what are the top 3 reasons you would encourage them to think about in terms of taking on IPD?
So number one, I would ask if they're happy with their current outcomes.
Right.
And so if you're happy with your current outcomes, then keep doing what you're doing.
Right.
There's no reason to change. This is, looking at it from my IPD, I think was developed by people that were looking for different outcomes. And so they started exploring different things.
As a general contractor, how should I be marketing my company to owners in order to identify ones who may be interested in IPD? Is that something I should even be thinking about, or is this purely something that is owner generated and owner initiated?
I think it's hard to do it without the owner on board.
Right.
I participate in groups where people say, well, how do I convince more owners to do this? And my message to general contractors is, well, change the way you think about delivering projects within whatever framework you get. So you can be more transparent and open book with your trades. You can think about your supply chain differently. And then I think what owners are, what I'm looking for, and I know others are looking for it, is you're looking for a partner who's going to be your expert in construction, but work with you, roll up their sleeves and work with you. They're not going to give you the Heisman and say, just tell me what you want, give me the money, and I'll go handle it, because that's not what we're trying to do. We want a team effort, and that's not how you build teams.
Right. And I think this is fundamental when we talk about these, for lack of a better phrase, non-traditional methods of delivery, is that you can't kind of fake it. There has to be buy-in from all parties involved. Otherwise, you get something other than what you're calling it.
Right. It's not easy. To be clear, one, hospitals are hard no matter what delivery model you build them with. Most construction, a lot of construction is just hard. So this is about getting rid of the back charges and the snarky RFIs with no suggestions. And it's trying to get rid of that so you can focus on fixing the problems. So then let me ask you this then. If you can think of you don't have to give me the details, the gory details, but you've got an IPD type project going, you've got the buy-in from all parties, and then a major roadblock come across. Mm-hmm. How are those dealt with? What needs to happen in order for that culture of collaboration to be maintained and for the project to be moved forward? Tell me something like, what are those meetings like? So in the beginning, there's like a resetting of expectations, right? In the beginning, it starts, okay, owner, you're going to have to pay for this. And it's like, okay, well, let's everybody remember the framework of this contract. And I'll start by asking, did I change the scope on the project? And the answer in this case is no, right? This is a constructability issue or a problem that's come up in the field. And so once the team realizes, wait, we're not going to get extra money for this. This is basically coming out of our shared contingency. And if we use it all, it's coming out of our profit. The conversation quickly turns to, okay, what's the most effective way to resolve this issue? I had one example. There's have some images if people want it, we could put it in the notes, but
absolutely. Yeah.
We had a cantilevered truss coming out off of this building, a roof truss. And once they were all installed, there's over 100 of them. They were sagging, and the engineers were arguing about whether they were sagging or deflecting or rolling or curling and you could go infinitely deep into this. But I was out of the conversation from a change order point of view in 5 seconds because I didn't change the scope. Now then there was, okay, the engineer, the trusses failed before they met the engineer's loading criteria. But the loading criteria provided by the engineer didn't match the field, but they were failing before they even got there. And so it turned into a lot of finger pointing. And at the end of the day, on a T&M basis, the team had to jack up the building and add a top cord to every single one of these 100 trusses after the sheathing was on. Right. So it was $250,000 worth of work, but the job didn't lose any time. I mean, within 2 weeks, they came up with a solution. They implemented the solution. The trade knew that they were going to get paid, because that's the big worry, right? I'm going to do $200,000 worth of work and I'm not going to get paid for it. Yes. And so I paid for it, but it came out of this collective bucket that the team was going to share in if it didn't get spent. So in a way, I got less back than I would have. But that to me is a good example of the team saying like, okay, we own this. We better fix it. And so is that the idea of putting the contingency into the contract, and that pool of money is something that is for these types of things, but it can be then given back at the end if it's not, or shared at the end if it's not used? Yeah, I would think of, sometimes we'll call it's a buffer to protect the team's profit. It's an acknowledgement that we will miss things. It's a little bit of taking the fear away. What we try to do is have a transparent contingency so everyone doesn't keep their own contingency.
Yeah.
Everybody give up your contingency. We'll put one, the team will manage it collaboratively, transparently. And then if we don't spend it, we'll give half of it to the team.
Right.
And we'll fix the profit at the beginning of the job as a lump sum. So you don't get penalized by billing less than the full contract value. You still get all the profit and a shared savings. So call it like margin enhancement. You can make a better margin on the job.
Okay. So in this project, in this type of delivery model, any quote unquote change orders or anything like that are handled by that contingency pool of money? Yeah.
The only ones that are not would be discovered site conditions that aren't readily discoverable. So you hit a spring in excavation that, no way to know it was there. An agency, the government comes out with some new regulation out of the blue that increases the cost of the job. Or the most common is the owner changes the scope. We have a shelled floor and we decide we want to build it out. We have to increase the contract for that.
Right.
But errors and omissions, RFIs, design issues, substitutions, all of that, the team gets to manage within their pot.
Right. Okay. So who is IPD not for? Who shouldn't be even thinking about doing IPD?
I think if there are not gains to be made from investing in the upfront, so a ground up hospital, you have 200 people full-time on the job a year before you start construction.
Yeah.
The job is not complicated enough where you need that kind of coordination. You're going to just spend more and you're not going to see it savings. So if your projects are simple, if you're going to build like a cold shell office building and then somebody else is going to own the risk of the tenant improvements, I would probably not do this.
Right.
If you're going to build a retail store. So it's really if you have a lot of MEP, complicated systems, a lot of stuff above the ceilings. So the people that this model works for are pharmaceuticals, oil and gas, semiconductor, people that have big, complicated projects. And when they go over budget, they go hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars over budget. They're catastrophic failures.
So do you find the MEPs are the ones who are driving a lot of this change in the industry?
I don't know that they're driving it, but I would say there are some very sophisticated MEP trades out there, and you want them on your team in these models. And so that's the name of the game, is to get those partners. So I think I can have the best GC in the world, but if my trades can't model and coordinate and prefabricate from the model, the GC can't make that happen. On the flip side, if I have MEP trades in a contract where they're going to work together and they're going to model and coordinate and they're going to prefab from the coordinated model, the GC doesn't need to be that sophisticated for me to get a quality outcome.
Right. Okay. Excellent. So what if I'm a GC? I've tried this before and it hasn't worked. What advice would you have for me? Because, buzzword this, buzzword that. I'm just saying this is how some people think. Give me some money. Fair. I'll build the project. What if this hasn't worked? What advice would you have for me?
It would be to do an honest reflection of what really happened. So we call it a plus delta. So break it down in detail and say, okay, what happened here? There's another concept of a 5 why. It didn't go well. Okay, why didn't it go well? Because we went over budget. Well, why did you go over budget? And usually multiple layers down, I think you'll find the owner didn't live up to their expectations. The wrong firm got hired. There was a major problem that people knew about but didn't take seriously. They thought they could resolve it and they didn't share it. A lot of times they will hard bid the job, but then sign an agreement that everyone's going to collaborate and pretend they're open book with guaranteed cost. And then the GC starts back charging people. And then over. Collaboration done. I don't care what you say.
So is that just the GC in your mind as an owner? Is that the GC just trying to get the job up front by sort of, giving sort of mouth or giving assent to the collaboration, but then, doing whatever's necessary on the back end to get theirs?
I think there's a lot of that, frankly. I don't think that's all it is.
Right.
but I think that definitely happens. I think projects also get sold by an executive who has a good idea, but they haven't trained the actual PM or the superintendent who's going to be on the job. So there's a bait and switch, whether it's intentional or not. It may not be. That I've seen a lot, I think. So every GC that I talk to says, well, this is the way I do work, and I've been doing it this way for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And so they're actually not open to even hear something new. Right. And so a lot will go into it doing exactly what they've done for the last 20 years, thinking that they're on the right path without being open to learn anything new or try something new.
Do you find there's contractors who are able to perhaps have different ways of delivery within their own company, where they maybe have a team that's able to do IPD, but then other folks are doing more traditional ways of delivering the projects?
Yeah, absolutely. And that different companies have different skill sets. A big thing I've learned is you got to get not just the right company, but the right team. And frankly, you can have the right team from the wrong company and be really successful. What I mean is a company that's not a healthcare builder, but you get a PM and a superintendent that are really detail oriented and collaborative, and the job will go well. And you can get a big Bay Area contractor that's very sophisticated and innovative, and you can get a team that just has a beat the heck out of the trades mentality and submit a lot of change orders, and it won't go well. So yep, I think so. And I've also had PMs like, this is a great PM if I'm going to do a lump sum job, and this is a great PM if I'm going to do this. I would try to put them in a situation to be successful too.
There you go. So the owners, I think sometimes, would you say this is correct, that the owners sometimes they're a little too idealistic in their approach, and they need to be a little more objective and hard-headed when selecting contractors and matching them up with the type of job that they're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I also think that owners are too idealistic, and they think that they can just give the contractor and the designer a project and then look away and they're going to get everything they want without participating. And it doesn't work that way. It's hard.
Yeah, I had a home remodel like that this past year. I know what you mean.
It just, I think the owners that really get in trouble are the ones that think that they can completely delegate responsibility for managing a project to someone else. Right. And that they're going to get what they expected. It doesn't work that way.
So if you had one request of a general contractor, let's say you're having a couple of beers and you're just sitting talking about the industry. He's not trying to sell you something. You're not trying to get him to bid on something. But if you had one request in terms of how GCs show up and how they interact with someone like yourself who is on the owner side of the equation, what would that request be?
It'd be two parts. One, be open to the idea that you could learn something. And I don't mean that from me, like be open to the fact that new things are being invented every day, and that, we don't build things the way we did 20 years ago. And, we don't have to build them 5 years from now the way we build them today. Right. And two, I think it's really hard if you've been in a general contractor role your whole career to think like an owner and think about the entire end-to-end project and taking responsibility from the original idea to a year after it's been in use. And so, I want to work with somebody who's going to see it from my lens. And it's like you're building your home. You want your home done. You don't want someone to say, well, the architect screwed up the detail on the sink, so it's not my fault that your sink leaks. It's like that. I don't care whose fault it was. I just want it done right.
Okay, so let's just talk about that just for a brief moment here, that idea of think like an owner. So how can a general contractor move to the other side of the table, so to speak, and begin to see it through your eyes?
When I figure that out, I'll let you know. But I think maybe your example is, think about if you're remodeling your house. Yeah. What do you want? If you're buying a car, what do you want the experience to be like? So if you're going out and hiring a team of people, do you want to have to sit between them and try to mediate an argument? I mean, and the other thing is that the owner has ultimate kind of responsibility for the budget. And a lot of contractors I work with say, well, it wasn't in the drawings or it wasn't done right. So of course you owe me more money. But the owner is sitting there going, well, maybe I don't have more money. I mean, this is how much I have. Right. I don't get a get out of jail free card because I can show that RFI 377 wasn't captured correctly. My bosses expect me to just make it happen.
Okay, so then my audience listening to this is general contractors, subcontractors, what are 3 action items that you would recommend to contractors who would perhaps want to look into this IPD delivery or perhaps do more projects or be more successful when they're in that IPD environment?
Well, so I have some clear biases, to be honest.
Of course, but that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
So,
okay there.
I would suggest looking into the concepts of lean construction. So you can go to leanconstruction.org and there's a lot of information there. So basically borrowing from what Toyota and manufacturing companies have done and bringing that into design and construction. And then I would suggest don't find all the reasons why it doesn't apply.
Right.
Find the things that can apply. And the things that you can adapt, because a lot of people just say, well, we're not making cars. Okay. If you have that attitude, you won't find anything, but there's actually a lot of good stuff out there.
So let me ask you this then, since we've opened the lean can of worms, what would you say are fundamental aspects of the lean process that work every time in a construction project?
So I think of lean as delivering customer value,
right?
Through streamlined processes,
right?
Practicing continuous improvement,
right?
So the number one thing that I see where projects get offline is there's not time spent up front to get alignment between the schedule, the scope, and the budget, the design team, the construction team, projects, and the owner's responsible for this most cases. But if the general contractor is not, actually saying, look, we need to pause for a second. So a lot of projects get started without being properly studied, like a feasibility study you could call it different things, but you got to get alignment. So I joke a lot, some projects are over budget and some projects are just plain underfunded.
Yes.
And so that's about not having the appropriate input up front. And so I think if you do that well, you will have success. If you had to pick one thing across any product type or any contract model, just get the right schedule and budget up front.
So it's doing that upfront work that's really, really necessary to establish that culture of collaboration, that commitment to transparency, and the strength of the relationships that's going to get you over the various hurdles that you might face in the project.
Yeah, I think that's hard for a general contractor because most general contractors are in a mindset of like, I'm going to price what's on the drawings.
Right.
They're not thinking about, based on my experience, what's it really going to cost to build a project like this? And then to be totally honest, the ones that do, I tell them they're wrong or they don't, it can't possibly cost that much money. So there's a collaborative tension there, but don't provide a budget that you can't actually build it for, because the owner doesn't want a bunch of reasons why your number was not right, but it wasn't their fault. They just want the right number up front and they'll fund it and build it and pay you and it'll go well and you can do more work.
Excellent. Excellent. James, if someone wants to get hold of you and explore this a little bit more, how can they do that?
The best way to get a hold of me, I publish a website that's just a hobby for me called leanipd.com. Mm-hmm. So you can email me, james@leanipd.com, or there's a contact form there. And that's the best way for any kind of questions. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, so you can find me that way as well. If you're interested in work for my employer, then you can find it at just designandconstruction.ucsf.edu, and we're a public institution. So that's the best way. Watch that. We're not, we can't negotiate the work like a private company. So,
right.
But we have plenty of work coming up. So I would monitor that.
Sweet. What about, you have a YouTube series as well?
Yes, I just recently, it's an experiment. I'd say it's a spin-off of the Lean IPD work. And so I am doing just a video series breaking down what is IPD, what's an IPD contract. I plan to go into a little bit more detail on lean concepts like last planner, target value design, things that I think would just help introduce the concepts. They're not going to get a PhD out of it or anything, but it'll introduce it.
Excellent. So that might be something for a contractor to sit down with their new PEs or PMs and just introduce the ideas, get them sort of filtering and percolating in the organization, perhaps?
Yep. I think it'd be a great resource for a staff meeting. The videos are 2 to 10 minutes. I mean, they're not long and they go into one specific topic. So that might be a good way to use it. Beautiful.
We'll link to that channel in the show notes as well.
Wonderful. As soon as I get 100 subscribers, I can have a vanity name, but not yet.
Oh, beautiful. 100. You can have a vanity name at 100 subscribers. Okay. Beautiful.
That's what I understand.
Awesome. Rock that YouTube channel. So I know you're there in the Bay Area. As we're wrapping up here, I like to ask my guests, what's your favorite place to eat in the Bay Area?
I could say right now, anywhere.
Anywhere.
I would just love to go out to a restaurant.
Like a normal human being, huh?
Yeah, like a normal human being. I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't been out to a restaurant in the Bay Area in so long.
Well, if in the past, what was one of your favorite places to go, just in case it's still open here in the age of COVID?
What would I even say? I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
I honestly, I like any place that serves beer.
Serves beer. Okay. I'm going to give one then for San Francisco. It's called, I think is it the Slanted Roof or the Slanted Door?
The Slanted Door. I've never been there, but I believe that's an excellent place.
The Slanted Door. So I live in Sacramento, and my dad, when he was alive, he used to come visit me from England, and he loved to hit the Slanted Door on the way out of town when he was going to the airport. And he would get this bottle of white wine and a whole bunch of oysters and get ready for the flight at the Slanted Door there on the Embarcadero in San Francisco.
So I actually live in Rockland outside Sacramento.
Oh, yeah.
So there is a kind of a tapas and wine bar that I frequent called Citizen Vine.
Citizen Vine in Rockland.
And so I'd recommend that. Great place to pop in. People are very friendly, and you will probably find me there.
Beautiful. Well, Citizen Vine in Rockland, we'll link to that one in the show notes, as well as the Slanted Door. James, once again, thanks for your time. I appreciate you joining me here today on Construction Genius.
No problem. Thanks, Eric.
Awesome. Today's episode was brought to you by the Construction Conclave. If you as a construction leader would like to develop your skills and get involved in a community of like-minded construction professionals who are focused on building healthy teams, profitable projects, and long-term successful businesses, then the Construction Conclave is for you. It's a private, invitation-only group of construction leaders that are focused on developing their leadership skills. We do training every single month online that looks at how to become a better leader in a very practical, straightforward way. We also have other events that build community and camaraderie so that you can associate with others who are interested in developing their skills as leaders. If you'd like more information and to see if you qualify for participating in the conclave, feel free to reach out to me, eric@ericanderton.com. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and thanks again for listening.